Whole thing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Live. We are now live. Episode 9, made in the 80s podcast and other stuff. Welcome to episode 9. Wow, we've made it 9 episodes without absolutely destroying and killing each other. It's like a 80s sleepover party here. We made it. Give it time. I'm sure we'll give up. Or you will. But no, the viewership has been pretty solid. The podcast downloads have been good. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Got a good, solid show for you. The first half, the first beginning part where we actually get people to join on Instagram Live, I like to talk about auction stuff and, things of that nature that people on there love to hear about or talk about. So,
and I came prepared for that because I brought English muffins. While you're doing that thing, I'm just gonna
crunch away.
Enjoy the peanut butter.
English muffins weren't really an 80s thing. What was the big 80s thing?
They were.
No.
Yeah, Thomas's fucking bag. When Thomas made the English muffin, they had iconic 80s commercials. Are you kidding me?
All right, well, I guess I just wasn't rich enough for those.
Oh, don't play that game. We were poor enough for those.
I had Pop-Tarts, bro. I don't know about you. But...
See, you were rich, you piece of shit.
Oh, really? Those were rich?
Pop-Tarts. We got Toastums, okay?
Oh, okay. All right, fair enough.
The ghetto brand with no frosting, because that's unhealthy, as if the rest of the Toastum was a model of fucking health. I
saw a video or a meme the other day that said, have we not reached the point of technology where we can frost the entire Pop-Tart yet?
Amen.
I'm one of the weirdo. I ate the frostless Pop-Tarts, just so you know.
By choice?
Yes, by choice. I don't like sweet stuff. Overly sweet stuff, certainly.
So much. Good Lord.
Oh, God.
Anyway.
Well, we got some interesting stuff to talk about. Obviously, the last Heritage auction, and the new Heritage VHS auction are on and live today for the first time. First edition Beats by Dre. No, they're not, but they're pretty close, I think. Yeah, but they're not from the 80s. I probably need to get...
They're the Toastum brand of Beats by Dre.
Beats by Dre.
No frosting on those.
Beats by Hay from Mexico. Let's see. I can kind of hear myself there. But no.
Yeah, all of a sudden I picked up an echo.
VHS auction opens today on Heritage. 245 items. Now, I did talk to those big cushy ones, those with the huge, those were like from the 70s. Actually, my dad had those.
Those are like for helicopter pilots.
But they had them at home. You'd have them hooked up to the 8-track stereo. I
had one of those too. He made me wear it to the monster truck shows.
Yeah.
I felt like an idiot even then.
Dude. The VHS auction that just opened today. Why am I hearing myself so much on you? You got to turn your thing down.
I don't know, man, because it was fine when we started.
Yeah, you got to turn it back down.
I did.
You need to made something that makes you look like you're in 1982, for sure. That is kind of true. I got to work on my headphone game for this. So VHS auction dropped today. I think they accidentally put up some of the reserve prices when they first put it up for the first hour, half hour until they got it in order. But no, some interesting stuff. For those of you that don't know, public service announcement, Heritage will be taking VGA, IGS. What else? I think maybe they're still going to potentially work with Beckett. But that's
CGC?
It. CGC, I've heard.
If they go down that road,
they're sniffing around. I heard that CGC is looking for some people, so I'm imagining that they're going to join the game, and that's it. So that's all I'm recommending that you send things to, because I wouldn't want to recommend anything that you then come back to me 6 months later and say, "Hey, Heritage won't take this. Why were you telling me to send my stuff there?" Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. I'm just saying. I don't want to, put anything out there that's going to mislead you, to steer you away from something that you can no longer submit to the biggest auction house in collectibles, especially the ones that we like to do. But that's just my 2 cents.
You're crazy on your little thing now, but they'll learn in 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
So
there's some interesting stuff up. Now, I did talk to Mikey about some of the stuff from the last auction. and Jay over there. They're doing a great job getting stuff in. I did think that it would have been a good idea to kind of break stuff up into kind of 2 days like they do with video games, where you have the first big hitters on day one with a live auctioneer. And then the second day or second time period kind of getting rid of, the big stuff first and then move on to some of the smaller stuff, because like the last one was really long. If you remember, it was like 4 hours. And a lot of the stuff in the second half of that auction did not do very well because there was just so much stuff and people were just tuning out. So hopefully this one, I don't know. I think they might still be doing it all at once. I don't know if it's going to have quite as much stuff, but there are some big name things in here, obviously. Just off the top of my head, those 3 Rocky big boxes are up. And then the Superman big box beta is up. I mean, I find that to be kind of the big stuff, but boy, there's already, wow, there's a 9595 early seal wraparound Goonies IGS graded. That's already at 10,000. Wow.
Is it two-tone tape?
Two-tone. No, I don't know. Let me see if I can click on it here and
so
it'll bring it up.
If anyone is sort of new to VHS, the two-tone tapes have the gray. If you're looking at the VHS tape from the bottom, like if it's in the slipcover or whatever, the two tones, the little gray flap will be, gray, and the rest will be black. Those signify the earlier releases, usually early 80s stuff.
No, not a two-tone tape, but definitely a 9595 on IGS is a very difficult get. I mean, I've submitted a lot of stuff to them, and that's a difficult get. So yeah, that's one that's already taking off. There's some interesting stuff. There's a cool WrestleMania tape in there from 85. Yeah, there's some really interesting. Those Rocky big boxes, I mean, I've only seen a couple of them in general at all. There's the Indiana Jones. It's the Canadian version, but with the Indiana Jones with the Temple promo on the front.
That'll be interesting to see if there's a price difference with Canadian or not.
I mean, I think certainly there will be. From what I've seen on the private sale market, there's a big difference there.
Although I will say those Warner Brothers Canadian watermarks look so badass, the big ones.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I actually prefer those. Those look just amazing. Like on a Batman.
Prefer those, eh?
E?
You should have that Canadian accent nailed with your Milwaukee nonsense.
It's not that, different.
And then
just have less hope.
Yeah. Let's see. We have I wanted to review. We kind of reviewed some of the stuff from last time, but that was before the auction fully closed. It was interesting to see. Certainly, CGC did really well in their first auction at Heritage with video games. Some of the premier pieces, some of the premier pieces. That first graded Zelda Rev round, first ever graded CGC game. I'm sure they made sure it was that one on purpose. But that did really well, brought 6 figures. That's such an iconic game. And that's one of the ones, as everything has cooled off over the last 12 months, that people are still searching. I missed out on a couple of them that I thought I bid pretty well and didn't get them, but people still continue to search that, and they still continue to search, obviously the early Mario stuff, but that Zelda, any of the early round seal, even the oval seal stuff continues to be highly sought after and getting a lot of big numbers.
Someone said hello to us. Hello, Sardon.
Oh, there it is. What's up? We did talk a little VHS.
Really bothering to say hello as well.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that boy. Scrappy.
Scraps. Dude. Speaking of scraps, man, that's something I was going to bring up later, but since you brought it up, I saw a movie. Just got back from Sundance, my 21st Sundance, if you can believe that. I saw only 2 movies this time. When I first started going to Sundance, it was like make a list, drive around town, wait in line, I mean, I saw some of the biggest movies that come through there over the last 20 years by, finding a way to get in. Now, my buddy lives right around the corner from the 2 theaters that are furthest from Main Street. Whatever's there, if I feel up to it at 8:00, I'll mosey on in and see if I get a ticket. If not, I don't even care. So I only saw 2 movies this year, but one of them was called Scrapper.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And yeah, it's about a girl whose mother dies suddenly. She's 12 and the dad shows up in her life. And he kind of looks like Eminem. He's been living on Ibiza, and she's probably more fit to run the household than he is.
So it's kind of a role reversal.
Yeah, it's great though. It's so funny. Brought me to tears a little bit. It's like a sad comedy, dramedy, something or other like that. I guess that's what they call it these days. But yeah, Scrapper was a pretty good one.
Keep an eye. Is there going to be Oscar buzz?
Oh, well, it did win the whatever I just saw online. It won the jury award for the whatever it was in. I don't know if it was U.S. dramatic or world dramatic, maybe world dramatic since it was British. But yeah, it won. And then the other one that I saw was Kim's Video, a documentary. Do you remember that at all? It barely rang a bell with me, but I guarantee you there'll be some New York people that would remember Kim's Video. So Kim's Video was a big VHS and DVD rental store from like the late 90s, mid 90s, I think, into the 2000s in New York City. There were like 7 or 8 locations. And I guess at one point they had 55,000 tapes and movies and whatever. And they closed the shop. And there's this whole thing about how they were looking for the right place to house it. And they ended up going to some place in Italy that turned into be some kind of problem with Berlusconi, the president, and the mafia. And pretty wild story. Some of these documentaries, you think you're getting into one thing and you end up with something else. But what was really cool is they used a bunch of clips from like different movies from the 70s and 80s, because the guy telling the story, the narrator, who's the maker of the documentary, he's like he's just like loves movies growing up, and he wants to figure out a way to be in the movie business. Well, he ends up making this documentary, and the story is driven by all these little segments of great movies from the 70s and 80s a lot, and then some other classics, early movie classics. But
come on, bro,
that's how the whole thing is driven, was by a bunch of these movie clips. Definitely worth checking out. Kim's Video. And that was mentioned in this article. I don't know if it won anything, but it's been getting some buzz. Of course, they show a ton of VHS and VHS tapes and clips from old 80s VHS movies and stuff. So that was pretty cool little that one I was like, oh, if it's there and I can get in, I'm going to go grab it because it looks like something that we'd be interested in for sure.
Yeah. What are you drinking out of your glass?
Water, but look at that.
Was it filtered?
It's filtered water, yeah, but it's in a glass made of cassette tapes.
I see that. I see that. Just making sure you're staying healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want that Cleveland water.
No, definitely not. I mean, I grew up swimming in it, but that's why it explains a lot of the issues with myself. Yeah, the last auction. I mean, look, let's be honest. People are looking for new reasons to get excited. We've seen a lot of these titles over and over again now for the last couple of years. Certainly some of this stuff got big numbers, 2 years ago, and, well off a lot of the highs and hype. But, like we said then, Mario, Zelda, early black box Nintendo, a few of the big hitters from some of the other systems have held up. But yeah, I mean, we're well off of those. I mean, we talked about this before.
You're just talking video games or VHS, or what do you mean?
Well, everything really, but certainly video games have felt that. VHS has felt it a lot, other than the big stuff. I mean, none of the smaller stuff.
I think VHS is starting to climbing, baby stepping again.
Well, the big stuff held up.
Well, yeah,
yeah.
But you said the last 2 years, there's one big title for VHS that has a huge following. That maybe I'm wrong. I can't remember in any Heritage auction or anything, so I don't think there are any comps. But it's tough as nails to find. I hope that's an 80s term. Masters of the Universe. Thoughts?
Doesn't pop up that often. I know you and I love it. It was one of the first movies that I vividly remember seeing in the theater. 1987, our year. But
I believe they just put it on either Prime or HBO. They just added it, so you can go watch it for free if you want. But I mean, can you remember a comp for that from an auction house? I mean, not eBay or anything.
No, I don't think so. And I mean, that's a safe search that I have, and I very, very, very rarely see that come up. I know there was one that came up that you snagged recently, but that might have been the only one I've seen in 6 months. So
I was going to say, even that was probably like 6 months ago now. I got lucky on that. But yeah, I mean, that's like the only one I'd seen in at least a year, I think.
Well, I think, there's like there's a time period right now where even the stuff that you haven't seen very often, there just aren't enough buyers coming in for it, but the people that have it aren't going to move it either. So it's in that weird transition where it's like, you're going to have to get somebody come in to motivate someone to move it out of their collection, which in my opinion is a good thing. Most of the big speculators from video games and VHS have moved on, and so
who do you think? Okay, so here's an interesting question that's been proposed to me a few times by people. So when we see a VHS tape go for 5-10 grand, maybe a little more at, say, we'll just say Heritage, who do you think the buyers are for that? Like, I'm not saying name names. I mean, like, what is that target demographic? What is the group that are buying those for that kind of money?
Orthodontists. No, I mean, honestly, like, I think Heritage is done, and the other auction houses, Golden, Hakes, Comic Connect, whatever, on down the line. I think they've done a fairly good job of building the hype and interest in these things through I'm sure they have a list and a database, and, the books, they send the books out, they send the emails out, they get all these people involved that probably wouldn't have been involved by searching eBay or the private market.
Mm-hmm.
And, they've been able to, it eventually get to the point where you're trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip because there's only so many things you can get people with money to be interested in buying. But I do think that these have some potential moving forward to bring in more and more collectors away from some of the stuff that they were building before. I think video games open the door to some new ideas, as that built over the last 3 or 4 years. And so, I think, I do think, and you and I have talked, I think there's going to be a big move out of sports cards in the next couple of years. So that money will have to flow somewhere else, I think. I mean, I don't see a lot of this stuff in sports cards is just nonsensical to me. I mean, the numbers don't make sense.
Stuff.
Modern sports cards, but even older stuff. I mean, there's a lot of people think like, oh, you take some card from the early 60s. There's not that many. There's still a lot. Now, there's not a lot of 10s, of course, but that's in anything. So I just think there's a overabundance of graded sports cards in general. And I think that money is going to shift and move elsewhere over the next few years. And certainly, I mean, some of these modern sports cards, these non-organic, fakely created one-of-one things, I don't know who is paying $50, $70, $80, $100,000 for Jalen Hurts rookie patch, one-of-one, fakely made by Panini. Fake scarcity to me has always been bullshit. So I think that, this is there's going to be a big shift in that. But speaking of that, it gives us a good transition to talk about yesterday's games and the football games and move on to a couple things. Boy, if I was a Bengals fan, I would be mad. A good thing I'm up in Cleveland, but I have a bunch of Cincinnati fans. That was a rough. I really wanted to see Cincinnati and the 49ers, 2 80s rematches. I think they met in like 82, 83, 84, somewhere in there. And then, of course, they rematched again some years later with Boomer Esiason. But yeah, we got who you got in the Super Bowl. Well, I'll tell you, I have very little interest in this game other than the fact that the Kelsey brothers are from Cleveland Heights here. And I've met Travis a couple times. He throws some parties and goes out a lot when he's in town. He's actually a really, really cool guy. Really nice guy, really cool guy, really genuine guy, a wild dude. Obviously, you know his story. Kind of got kicked off the team. Then he went to a JUCO. Then he was back at Cincinnati because his brother vouched for him or whatever. He's got a really interesting story. And we talked about this last time, though. they throw out this whole greatest of all time stuff now like it's nothing, right? And they were mentioning him as the greatest tight end of all time yesterday. And like, dude, the dude's a really good. He plays with a really good quarterback in a great offensive system. But like Rob Gronkowski, Ozzie Newsome. I mean, there's some legends going back.
I knew you'd pick a Cleveland guy. I knew.
Dude, Ozzie Newsome is considered the greatest tight end ever.
Within
for many
zip
years.
Code, yeah.
For many years. Name who else was in that conversation?
I'd put Gronk ahead of him.
Now I'm talking about for many, many years, Ozzie Newsome was considered the greatest tight end of all time.
The first Kellen Winslow was in that conversation. I'm not saying I agree. I'm just saying you asked who's on that list. He's in there.
That dude.
Tony Gonzalez had a little run for being in there. Antonio Gates for a brief time.
These are all modern. Keep in mind, Ozzie Newsome and Kellen Winslow kind of were the majority of that conversation in a time when those players were utilized significantly differently.
Damn it, Scrappy! No, you're not licking the plate. That's it.
Scrappy, you're out. You're off the podcast.
I gotta move this fucking plate. Keep going.
No, I mean Ozzie and Kellen Winslow. And speaking of Kellen Winslow, we were talking about this the other day. Man, what happened to Kellen Winslow Jr.? Speaking of Browns guys.
Oh, good Lord, that's not a good story. Yeah,
I mean, maybe that's not fully appropriate for this podcast, but
no, yeah,
that dude was like raping old grandmas, homeless grandmothers on the street.
Yeah, I mean that's getting for a Packers comp for that is Darren Sharper. Although I don't think it was grannies, I think it was date rape. But
yeah,
he's in jail.
But I'll tell you what, man, and it goes back 2 weeks ago too. There's something about more the 49ers than anything that just reminds me of my childhood. Those jerseys, obviously because of all of those great teams from that time. Montana and Steve Young and Ronnie Lott and Dwight Clark and Jerry Rice, obviously. And, the list goes on and on of the great players from that team in the 80s and into the 90s. Deion Sanders. I mean, wasn't Deion a trip bouncing back and forth from Dallas to San Francisco?
Yeah.
But Dallas and San Francisco, watching those games just brings back so many 80s memories for me. I don't know. If it does as much for you, but man, that would have been a great Super Bowl to see. I remember vividly watching that because I'm an Ohio kid. That
trash
Bengals,
can cash
49.
glass has been waiting for your answer for like 5 minutes now. Pick a team.
I thought the Vikings and the Eagles were pretenders all year long. Vikings proved me right. I've been, if the 49ers aren't playing the fourth string quarterback yesterday and him getting it. I mean, look, all these guys after the game talking shit. Oh, the commentator, the talking heads, dude, they were playing Navy in essence by the second quarter.
So there was the Chiefs.
The Chiefs, I think, are the better team.
I also picked the Chiefs.
The Chiefs are the better team. Yeah, the Chiefs are the better team, but who knows? I mean, the offensive and defensive line looks good. But back to it, Kelsey brothers from Cleveland going head to head. Is an awesome storyline. I think Andy Reid going back to face the Eagles is a really cool storyline. I think there's some interesting storylines, but I'm going to be, kind of a chick about it. I don't really care that much about either of these teams. I was hoping for at least be rooting for Joe Cool and the Bengals. I'm going to be watching for the commercials. And that brings up.
I knew you were going to break in my heart. That breaks my man heart. I swear to God, if you put out a post that says like "Yay sports ball," I'm gonna lose my fucking mind.
Dude.
Sports ball. I just want the commercials and Rihanna.
I can't get really excited about either one of these teams for multiple reasons. Even going back to Patrick Mahomes, it's like he wins one Super Bowl and it's like, oh, it's the next GOAT, dude. Can we all fucking relax? Like,
yeah, we can relax on the GOAT talk. I mean, he's a stud. There's no doubt about it. No,
that's great. He might win a couple. Who knows? The league changes quickly. There's a lot of competition. That's why the fact that Belichick and Brady did what they did is mind-boggling. 20 years of dominance in this modern era they'll never be matched again. I mean, it's insane what they were able to do for a 20-year period.
I agree, but I'm glad it's over with.
Well,
you can only watch the same rerun so many times.
I could watch that for another 10 years, and you should appreciate it. I don't think Brady's going to hang it up. I think the 49ers would be nuts If he came calling and say, I want to play for my childhood team, Joe Montana was my hero. I want to play for my childhood favorite team. I'm from the area. His parents, I think, are still there. How would you not say yes based on what you saw yesterday? What are you going to hand?
There's another quarterback that's available that was also his
from Northern California. Yes, your other favorite.
Oh, he's not my favorite. Get the fuck out of here.
You don't like Aaron Rodgers? Come on.
He's okay. I'm a Favre guy. You know that.
I'm a Favre guy too. I know. But I'm
just saying it's a possibility.
Either one of them. How do you say no? People are like, oh, they got Purdy and they got Lance and whatever. Dude, those are complete unknowns. None of those. No, but they've proven that nobody can stay healthy for them for the last couple of years. They got a turnkey Super Bowl team. They just need a quarterback. How would you not take that on? To say either one of those guys, let's run it.
Getting back to Rodgers for a quick second, like if I'm him, yeah, I would be chomping at the bits to go to either San Francisco, although I think that's a pretty dark horse possibility. The Jets, who are pretty solid, they just need a real quarterback. Or think about him going to the Raiders, reunited with Devontae.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or Brady going there with McDaniels, who's a John Carroll kid like me, strangely enough. We were actually there at the same time. So that would be interesting to see any of those guys in any of those places. Tom Brady ain't leaving unless it's in a wheelchair. Leaving where, though? Ain't leaving NFL. Where?
He means retiring.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay. I don't think he'll stay in Tampa, but certainly I wouldn't be a bad idea to stay in the NFC. I mean, the AFC is loaded. But yeah, back to the well, I will say this. Speaking of things that we will never see again, I know you don't like to talk a lot about tennis, but Novak Djokovic just won the Australian Open this weekend for his record-tying 22nd major title with Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer at 20. What those three guys have done over the last 20 years will never be done in tennis ever again. They have won, in essence, almost every tournament. They finished number one. One of the three guys has been number one for almost the entire period. They've won every major except for a small handful of majors over 20 years. It'll be interesting to look back at those guys 20 years from now and say, who's the greatest of all time? I still think it'll be Roger based on the beauty of his game. To me, Roger is like the Michael Jordan. LeBron might have some numbers that he takes over, or there might be somebody that wins 5 or 6 championships down the line, or maybe even more. But Michael Jordan, the beauty of Jordan and the way that he played the game visually, to watch him, his skills. I don't think there's anyone more skilled at basketball per se, and beautiful to watch. The same way with Roger Federer in tennis. And it's funny because one of the
tennis was interesting to watch was when Monica Seles got stabbed.
Dude, Monica Seles was one of my favorite players growing up.
You liked her. You liked those moans.
Well, she did start that. She did start the moaning at the time, and she used a backhand on both sides, which obviously was very wild and unique. And the sad part about that was that crazy German who stabbed her fulfilled his dream of Steffi Graf becoming, number one and whatever, because Monica was dominating her at the time. It always makes me
accomplished a goal.
So mad when I look at the top 10 lists of all time for female tennis or tennis overall, and she's not in that list and Steffi's near the top. Dude, she doesn't get stabbed. She was dominant. She would have won everything for the next 5 years. Steffi would have half the numbers of what she gets stabbed in the back.
Did he stab her with a forehand or a backhand?
Well, it's more of a Jason.
Okay, so like slow, just
more of a Michael Myers. It's like she was sitting in the chair. The guy came up behind her at a tournament, and stabbed her in the back.
Just one stab?
I think one stab before they jumped her. Well, right in the middle there somewhere.
All right, well, what's the over/under on the stitches? If I gave you a line of 45.5, are you taking the over or the under?
On the stitches for Monica Seles?
Yep.
Oh, under. I don't know if there were that many required. One blade.
How long was she out?
Somebody get Dr. What's his name on the line. No, I'm not going to look that up. It's just I'm not going to look up how many stitches. I don't want that on my search history.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Child's Play. No, maybe that's not the right reference. Yeah, wrong reference.
Hang on. I'm going to move me so I can use my computer.
Mm-hmm. But it takes me back. So this I don't think will ever be repeated. There was a real golden age in tennis in the 80s as well, where you had not the same dominance among three guys, but you did have the transition of, a lot of the older players played short periods of time. A lot of them were retired by their mid-20s, really. Whereas into the 80s and 90s, players finally started to elongate their careers. There was more people that could follow a player for a longer period of time, draw interest. Obviously, look at the difference in the way that athletes took care of their bodies then, now, going back even further. I mean, look, Jordan lived on cigars and whiskey a lot of the time. If he would have been able to take care of his body in some different way, like LeBron or any of these other guys do now, probably could have played at an even higher level through into his 40s.
Can I pause you right there and go back to Celis? I have an update.
Monica Seles update. Okay.
So she was out 2 years because of that.
Yes. Oh, I know. Yeah.
And how many? I'm going to forget about the over/under. How many stitches do you think total?
30.
It says, amazingly, only a few stitches were needed to treat the wound.
Wow. Okay. She came back and won.
So the dude, hold on. Most upsetting was the dismissal of attempted murder charge against Parche. The judge ruled Parche had diminished mental capacity and would serve no jail time.
Well, yeah, they in essence found him not guilty by reason of insanity. Obviously, if you're stabbing tennis players, if he would have hit that
45 stitches mark, they would have had to give him something. But if it's only
was that how they run that now? Mm-hmm.
That's Germany. Who knows?
But
right, go back to your talk.
The 80s brought a lot, and there were some great tennis video games from the 80s too. That
oddly enough, I was going to ask you, what's your favorite? Well, I was going to ask you two things. What's your favorite tennis video game of all time, and which one are you the best at of the history?
Oh, and there's some great ones. I mean, is it? I don't think sports games. If you play, like for me, there's a lot of sports that I played and that I was good at that I just don't enjoy on video games because it doesn't translate well. It just doesn't. Like I like the strategy of like football video games, but like it doesn't really mimic the game, right, at all. The feeling of it. Basketball, terrible, always has been, really. I mean, the best basketball game of all time is probably Double Dribble or something stupid, or NBA Jam. It's nonsense. Like the real game is so clunky and whatever. I think video games done for baseball translate pretty well. I feel like MLB The Show, it helps with your timing and stuff in that nature, but
pitch strategy.
Tennis stuff works awesome for video games. It really does. I mean, I'm a lifelong tennis player. There's something about tennis, some of the ones that implement the strategy and the movement well. It's a basic video game concept. It goes all the way back to Pong, right? And it just translates really well. I think if I had to pick some of the best, Hang Time and Blitz, great games. Yes. The ones that I really loved, obviously Nintendo NES Tennis is a classic, an all-time classic. My favorite tennis game of all time is Everett Lendl, which speaks to some of the legends that were born in the 80s. Not born, but were big names in the 80s. McEnroe, Connors, Lendl, Edberg, Boris Becker. Talk about a guy who lived it up in the 80s. Boris Becker, hot chicks, models, cocaine, gambling, whatever. That guy, he's like the Vince Neil of tennis for that time, the German. And but Everett Lendl Tennis, it was one of the few NES 4-player games, with the 4 score.
So you needed that little thing with that looked like.
You could play. Yeah, you could play boomerang. With 2. Yeah, you could play with 2. The boomerang one was for Super Nintendo. This one was like a chunky cube, the 4-player for NES. The boomerang one was the Super Nintendo multiplayer.
Did you know they had like it wasn't Bluetooth back then, but there was a wireless setup for NES.
Wireless setup for yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. It's
now
terrible.
I have kids who can afford fucking Pop-Tarts. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I had one. Sorry.
There it is.
There it is. Everett Lendl Tennis. I was addicted to that game. It had a full circuit with like rankings, and you would play all these different tournaments around the world. That was great. That was a fantastic game. for a while, I may not have it anymore, but I have the highest graded copy of that in the world from the Carolina collection, whatever that means. 9.4 A+ or something that was the highest graded. Now that was one that nobody really bothered to grade for a while, so that probably has fallen off. But
right up there with like a Bandai Golf.
Right. Lee Trevino's
tennis hair of all time.
Lee Trevino's golf. I love, dude, this is the other thing about the 80s. If you were someone famous or you put out a movie, you had to have a video game. Like if you were an athlete, you had a video game named after you. You had, some kind of if you were a movie, you had soundtrack with all these artists that had to be on it, from the time that made music specifically for your movie. Like it was just, and certainly, yeah, a movie or an athlete, you had to have a video game. Like there's Jack Nicholson golf, Lee Trevino golf. Like it's just funny.
Jack Nicholson golf? Because that I'm into.
Jack Nicholas, sorry, excuse me. Yeah.
Man, that'd be badass.
That would actually be, dude, did you see him delivering some of his lines?
I've always liked you.
Yeah. But and then the third one that would go in that
yards away.
Yeah. The third one that would
short game.
The third one that would go into that would be Virtua Tennis for Sega Dreamcast.
Dreamcast, yeah, that was an awesome. That was,
God.
I think, a marquee game for that platform. I truly believe that.
There weren't a lot of bangers for that. I mean, they had the Resident Evil title that added some to that. They had Crazy Taxi. That was actually the only Sega system that I owned like from the rip and was like all into.
100% same. The only one I had and like because it just didn't seem weird kid Sega like. It seemed like for the first time it was sort of cool.
I was watching that documentary on Netflix the other day, a series about high score, about all the the progression of video games. It's really interesting if you haven't watched it. And they, it's weird because they talked about how Sega was kind of marketed, and this guy that came in that took over the Sega of America, and how he wanted to change things in the perception of Sega, and they wanted it to be about sports and kind of like pushing the edge for more adult themes for kids and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't remember any of that. I just remember Sega. Certainly Sega Master System was always the weird kid at school who like just whatever for their parents or him or whoever was weird.
I guarantee you those Columbine kids had a Sega Master System. Yeah. Well,
I knew the one I was friends with his brother.
I did not know that.
You didn't know that?
No.
Oh, dude. So,
you knew a Columbine killer?
Yeah. So yeah, for sure.
Dylan or the other one?
The other one. So
what was the other one's name?
Eric Harris.
Eric Harris. Yeah.
Yeah. So dude,
he was the sexier one, right?
Yeah, the blonde. Yeah, the other one was like the grungy, fucking Pearl Jam kid.
I thought they were both sort of blonde.
No, the other one was.
Which one wore the backwards hat with the Boston?
Eric Harris. Yeah,
that was your buddy.
Yeah, but that was my buddy's brother. So I went to high school or elementary school near I went to middle school and high school near a Air Force base. Eric Harris's dad was in the military, and they were stationed there for just a couple of years. And his older brother, Kevin, went to our, this might have been maybe 5th, 6th grade, but right in the heyday of the 80s stuff. I mean, like, he and I were on the same soccer and basketball teams. He rode BMX in the neighborhood and skateboards with us. His neighbor, who was my buddy, had a RC10 track in the backyard where we would all run RC cars. My other friend, Scott, was a neighbor there. He had an amazing Nintendo collection. Like, I grew up with...
confirm Eric Harris had a Sega Master System.
I wish I could say for sure, but I don't want to, get busted for, play. I mean,
he can't sue you.
No, but it's true.
There's a lot of ins, a lot of outs,
a lot of what have yous there.
Like,
yeah. I just don't know if I can really, confirm that he had a Sega Master System and he was that weird.
Defamation of character.
Yeah, it's like he killed a bunch of people, but God, he didn't have a Sega Master System.
Forgot about that.
Thank God he didn't have a Sega Master System. Yeah,
he had to trample on his grave.
Right. It's not that he's perceived as a bad enough person already. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to also throw salt on the wound and also say that for sure he had a Sega Master System. Yeah, but he might have. But I do remember, the brother who did the stuff, man, I just remember being like an annoying little shit. He'd come over and he'd like jump on your leg, and he'd like whatever. Maybe I just perceived that many years later when that happened. That was the brother, or
that was Eric?
The little brother,
the
Eric.
Leg humping thing you just
did.
Yeah.
The little brother, because I would go over to see Kevin was on the basketball team with me and my other friend, And then like we said, we did the 80s thing in the neighborhood where you just did that stuff. That was like all summer, every day. You know, for us, it was basketball, tennis, football in the front yard, BMX, skateboarding, RC car making and running, video game playing.
So you RC card with a school shooter. Well, I did.
His brother
played croquet with a kid with half a thumb. So
yeah, well, I lost a college tennis match to a guy with half a thumb, but yeah, dude,
he had a thumb at one point too. Totally great thumb. And he was climbing a tree in his backyard, and then all of a sudden the whole neighborhood just it went pitch black during the middle of like the day, and he grabbed a power line.
Oof!
Oh yeah, wow. I went flying like Jurassic Park, just like that. He just shot off the fence and just hit the ground.
Like Stormy, what the garbage pail kid girl? Remember from Series 1, Stormy Shields, or I forget what that.
But yeah, he came back to school with like a mangled thing, and you know, he's a fireman now.
All right, well, shout out.
Yeah,
appreciate your service. One thumb and all. Got one nut Cruck and one thumb John. Fighting fires. Love it.
Did you ever play that firefighter game for Super Nintendo?
No.
Oh my God, is it awesome? You walk through a fire with the hose, like and like you know, there's like a meter where you run out of water, like that would happen, and then you got
this is the early designers of Luigi's Mansion. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It's instead of a fucking vacuum, yeah.
Right.
How come we don't vacuum fire out?
There was another game that had something. Oh yeah. No, it was Mario Sunshine where he's spraying the water. Did you ever play that on GameCube?
Never played Sunshine.
That's a long. That's what it's like. That's the Majora's Mask of Mario shit. It's the weird, unusual title that I finally did play through. Maybe like 2005, something like that. Some few years after it came out, but it is actually a pretty solid 3D style game. I hate to question Echo the Dolphin. We were talking about, so Genesis did have a few cool games. I just never got into Genesis stuff. I did get into the Dreamcast. They had only a couple really good titles. They had Shenmue. Virtua Tennis was an absolute classic. I remember I was actually in college playing tennis, and some of my buddies that didn't play tennis would come over and we'd all play tennis, and they my two friends, all they did was smoke pot and play Virtua Tennis. It was like for 6 hours a day. It's mind-boggling. The weird thing about that Virtua Tennis too, it didn't have all the top players at the time for some reason. I don't know why. I had a few good ones like Tommy Haas and a few other people, but I'm trying to think what else was good for. There was the Resident Evil title, Code Veronica, and then there might have been one or two other, but there wasn't a ton of good. And then the other thing that I did love from Sega, I don't know if you had it, but I had the Game Gear because I didn't have a Game Boy. Somebody that I knew had a Game Boy.
I got it for Christmas, and that's that one I've said a million times. My dad in huge magic marker letters wrote Tom on the back in red, and I wish I still had that so I could get that slab just to like protect it. So I did have a Game Boy, and then I have an older stepbrother who's a good dude, but kind of borderline Sega Master System. And anyway, he chose to get a Game Gear and go against our family's Nintendo, roots. So anyway, he went off to like high school or college or something, and then he left it. So I played a little bit. It just didn't have the same magic for me.
Yeah. I mean, Game Gear, I missed the Game Boy, even though somebody I knew at school had it. Let me borrow it a few times. I remember playing like Mario Land and Tetris and whatever. I got one many years later. But
whoever
Game
said,
Gear,
I can't read that comment, but yeah, Game Gear would burn through those damn
batteries.
I think there were AA.
I can't remember either. Yeah, but Game Gear had some pretty cool games and some cool sports games. But I just didn't get. Dude, that's a term we can come up with. SMS, Sega Master System person. Oh, that guy's an SMS.
SMS SS.
What's that?
Well, you add school shooter at the end.
Oh, okay, yeah. Maybe there's like different levels. I don't know if they're all going to go there, but yeah. But dude, that was wild. I mean, I remember when that happened.
Didn't you have someone just asked about the Philips CDI? Did you have one, or you had a neighbor that had one?
My uncle had one.
Okay.
My uncle had the Philips CDI. I think that's the one that had the Zelda titles for it or something.
The two Zelda titles.
Yeah.
The only like Zelda titles without a Nintendo seal, I believe.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I don't want to go down but isn't it crazy to think that like those two dudes started all that?
Are we going back to school shooters?
Yeah, the Columbine kids. I mean, that's dude.
Well, I mean, to be fair, there was that kid in the 70s from the Watchtower.
I mean, but that's the one that, from like University of Texas or whatever. Yeah.
Texas, yep. And then there was the Kent State. Well, that's not a school
the Kent
shooter.
State was not a school shooting.
But it was at a school, and there was a shooting.
That's here. That hits home because that's less than an hour from here. I have a lot of friends that went to Kent State. Yeah.
No wonder they did it.
Tin Soldiers and Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. That was a big deal, obviously.
So anyway, what was your point with the trendsetters?
Well,
I mean, would you consider them the GOATs?
The GOATs of school shooting? Yeah.
I had on my notes this week because I was like, dude, we can do a GOAT thing every week. And I was going to do
I did. I thought about we should do a top 5 or top 10 list every week for something.
Right,
but dude, you could spend the entire hour doing a top 10 list. Like you could do a top 5 list and take 2 hours. Like that would be a whole separate podcast. I guarantee you that there's some people.
2 or 3 GOATs, a GOAT list. I'm saying, are you putting them on your Mount Rushmore of school shooters?
Well, they're the originators. They're the George. What's that? God, my brain isn't firing right now. The George Mikan. They're the George Mikan. He may not have done George Mikan. They may not have done it the best, but the original first NBA superstar. I mean, those are the guys that came up with it. And all the timing of that like is so appropriate. Even when I was watching that documentary about video games, dude. Like Doom and Wolfenstein and all that stuff coming out right around the few years before that. And then all like the grunge music and Jeremy Spoken and blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, all that stuff.
The new metal right around that time too. And the shock rock.
Preceded that stuff. And so it's like,
they played Doom. They were big Doom fans.
Dude, there's no doubt that these things that we partake in influence our behavior. Anybody that thinks otherwise is just trying to make excuses for like.
I don't think it influences a sane mind. I think it can influence a.
Well, that's the problem.
I don't want to say insane mind, but someone with mental health issues,
or people that are easily impressionable, who are usually like young teenagers, kids at this point. I mean, dude, there's a lot of stuff. The problem is people assess a lot of these things from their own perspective. And they think that all the people in the world are like they are, like that have a mind and an emotional system that functions the way they do. It's like, dude, that's just not the reality of it. There's a lot of fucking crazy, disturbed people out there, easily influenced. I mean, obviously you can see that now from what we've created the last 5 years. So yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, are those games fun? Sure. Did I enjoy playing them when I was growing up? Yeah. Did they probably influence Columbine or a bunch of other shit? I think they might have. I'm just saying.
A little bit. I mean, I don't remember a trench coat in Doom. Do you?
There was some connection to that trench coat thing that came from some.
They banned those at our school for like.
Oh yeah, dude, year. that was such a.
As
big
if
deal,
we were all wearing trench coats in it. No one. We didn't
trench coat
like,
mafia.
Okay.
That just spread everywhere, but that came up right at that time with all the grunge music stuff. It
was after grunge, bro.
No, but I'm saying that came from that period, It's just crazy to think like some of the songs and games and things that were written at the time. They were talking on that video game show on Netflix about a game that got banned. That's actually a really cool one that's worth watching. They talk a lot about some really important times in video game history, like E.T. on Atari, how horrible that game was. And how it flopped the industry for a while. They talk about, things like Doom and obviously like the whole, Senate commission hearings about video games and their influence on our children and all this other shit.
Did you ever watch those PMRC Senate hearings from the 80s with like Dee Schneider?
No, but anything with Dee Schneider, I'm in.
Dude, they're so good. They called him to, I think it was Congress. I don't think it was the Senate. And Al Gore and his wife were the head of the committee. This is what led to the parental advisory labels.
Yep.
So they called 3 artists to speak: John Denver, Frank Zappa, and Dee Schneider. And Dee comes in with the huge curly blonde fucking fro mullet, a fucking, the jean jacket, tight ass jeans, just looking good. And they're like laughing at him like, oh my God, he's going to win our case for us.
Dude,
he's
really
not
smart.
a stupid guy.
He's
he comes
really
out
smart.
with like a statement and just fucking embarrasses the shit out of him. Calls out Tipper Gore for being a pervert because she's interpreting one of his songs as like sex slave when it was really about having surgery and being scared.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I don't know. It's like 10 minutes long. I implore everyone to at least watch the D. Schneider part.
The misinterpretation of art over time, you know, you listen to the guys talk about it, whether it comes to video games or other things. I mean, look at a really obvious one from the 80s is Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, which is actually a rebellious song, a revolution, like against what then Reagan used it for, which was like, oh, I'm all American. No, it was an anti-war, anti-Vietnam.
Fair, but then don't have an album cover with a huge flag and you wearing your goddamn jean trousers like you're a good old boy. I understand what the song's about, but it's like, it's just kind of, you're marketing.
There was some irony through a lot of that. Certainly there was. I mean, I think it was, you know, Bruce was always a blue collar,
but he's not
salt of the earth. The way his writing style came through to a lot of people at that time. That's his
image, sure, but that's not who he is.
You don't know.
Certainly not present day.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm talking about even going back to that time. That was so. I think he portrayed that kind of life of, you know, obviously revolution and anti-establishment things are different now than they were then. You could still embrace parts of that, yet just go out and be good old American boy doing fun stuff, you know.
Amen.
But still being
a better songwriter that was actually salt of the earth type of fellow, real blue collar fellow.
Oh yeah,
and his name's John Mellencamp.
Oh yeah. Like me some John Mellencamp. So
I love me some Mellencamp.
Dude, I didn't even think. I forgot that I went to the Rock Hall before I went to Sundance here in town, and there was so much to talk about in there. But I'll say this, dude, I'm not going to get overly into it.
Uh-oh.
The Rock Hall being in Cleveland is obviously a huge thing, and it's an amazing place, and it's got some really cool stuff. There's things that are bad about it. I think we don't get the ceremony here every year is ridiculous. The halls here, now they're going to do it between New York, LA, and Cleveland every 3 years and blah, blah. Okay. There's certain aspects of that are too small. There's people that should be included in it that aren't. There's the whole controversy about having rap and R&B in there and whatever. But there's a lot of goods and a lot of bads to the Rock Hall. They do an amazing job covering the early history of rock and roll, from rockabilly to blues, jazz, soul, whatever, into Elvis. They hit that period so well. They hit the 60s really well, obviously. They hit the punk scene in the 70s. And then all of a sudden, they go from the punk scene in the 70s and its influence on rock and roll to the 90s grunge scene. They just gloss over, like everybody did for so long, so much about the 80s. There's like a tiny little snippet in there about like a little bit of Motley Crue. I mean, a little bit of Metallica and Guns N' Roses. There's almost nothing in there from Motley Crue, which is mind-boggling to me. Mm-hmm. Nothing. There's very little from Guns N' Roses, which to me...
There's one little display for GNR and a pinball machine.
Yeah, dude. And there's almost nothing from Zeppelin, which blows my mind. There's so little in there from Zeppelin. And how you overlook two of the... I don't care what... We were talking about this after that. Who's a bigger American band than Guns N' Roses? Who?
Last true rock band to take over the world. And some people might argue maybe you
cut out you cut out there for a second. So I said, who's a bigger
black, but now it's back.
Yeah, who's a bigger American rock band than Guns N' Roses? Nobody.
Of all time or present day?
Ever.
I can name two. And I love one of these bands a lot, and I think you could interchange arguably any one of these four bands for biggest American band. Guns N' Roses, Aerosmith, Van Halen, The Doors.
Yeah, so we had this discussion, and it was like, okay, Guns N' Roses, The Doors, Aerosmith up until that time, but I mean, in retrospect, I don't even think it's close, right?
Well, we're both biased because, well, to me, GNR and Van Halen are a toss-up. They're both very, very important to me, and I couldn't pick one over the other.
Yeah, I just think in retrospect, yeah, they're huge, but there's not that how you don't have Zeppelin, Guns N' Roses, and even Motley Crue. Like,
dude, when I was there, when you dropped me off, all I wanted to see was the GNR stuff. I knew there was some display, but I didn't know what it was going to be. And I finally see it, and I'm like, holy shit. And there's the pinball machine, which, okay. And then they have what I think Axel's flannel, maybe from the Welcome to the Jungle video, when he gets off the bus and he's got the fucking hayseed. And dude, I like leaned over the rail and whoop, 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 fucking set the whole alarm off. I'm like, oh, yeah. fuck. And then like I waited for the alarm to stop, and then I went back and I fucking did it again like an idiot. I set the alarm off twice, dude.
Yeah. No, there's some cool pieces
just
in there. I just can't believe they have a huge section on the Beatles, a huge section on the Stones, huge section on Elvis.
Boring.
They just skate over everything from the 80s for the most part. Very little on Metallica, very little on Guns N' Roses, very little on Motley Crue, almost nothing on Motley Crue. We also don't know.
We know the Rock Hall is very political.
Well, yeah,
we don't know if maybe they have an issue with the Crew or Metallica or whatever. But either way,
well, no. What's his name that started Rolling Stone magazine? Warner, Jan Warner, or whatever his name is. Dude, that guy fucking hates 80s music. I know he does. They talked about it. There's a lot of bias that goes into that place. And if you look at the list, so they have a thing at the end where you can vote for like, why isn't this person and that person? You know who's at the top of the list? Why aren't they in?
Todd Rundgren,
Motley Crue. Thank God. Like, how is Motley Crue not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but Jay-Z is? Like, what are we doing? I have no problem with Jay-Z being in it, okay? They've transitioned the Rock Hall into the music of youth. It's a music hall of fame or whatever you want to fucking call it. They've changed the definition of what rock and roll music is over the years to make it fit the modern rhetoric or whatever.
Well, all the Rock Hall is, if I really had to sum it up, is a walking real life version of Rolling Stone magazine and all the politics that go with it.
Right. For sure.
That's what it is. Yeah. Now, there's still some cool shit there. Don't get me wrong. But what's cool, but sad? There is more.
Sad but true.
Yeah. Well done. There's more Randy Newman stuff there than Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. And I think Randy's a Cleveland guy. River. Maybe that's why. He's a Cleveland guy, so.
I love LA.
We love it.
You gotta breathe in me.
Randy Newman's great. Cleveland guy.
He is pretty sure he's a Cleveland guy. Randy.
What? So let me change gears here. A couple things that were interesting that I made notes on. Let me see what I have here. I
do have one kind of cool thing too.
No, I want to talk about well, I'll say this. I was talking about this last night, then we'll go into something else. But, the whole everybody gets a trophy inclusion thing has now spilled into fucking everything, including the Oscars, because the Oscar list just came out. Okay?
That's been like that for years. What do you mean?
I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about individuals like actors and is it actor or actress? What color are they? Blah, 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 all that stuff. Dude, the funniest part to me is now they added, just in the last couple of years, it's like, well, we have to have our hot talking point movies, but if we put all those in, then we don't have any room for the actual good movies. So now we're going to expand to like 12 movies for Best Picture, where it used to be like 5. Now there's like 12 because they know they got to get, they got to get an Asian film in there. They got to get a black film in there. They got to get some, gay film in there. They got to get something about Aboriginal people in there or whatever. 10 years from now, it'll be some other fucking talking points.
A gay, black, Aboriginal Jew suffering in the Holocaust.
In Asia, somehow.
Dude, if we write that movie.
Yeah. Dude.
We're in. That's our ticket.
They have to have all that go in there. So they're like, well, fuck, what do we do? Well, we'll just put up 15 movies so we can actually put the good films in too, no matter what they're about or who's in them. Doesn't matter. That would be better if we just had the better films up, but we have to have all the talking points. It's the same thing for Sundance now. I've been going to Sundance 20 years. It used to be a bunch of good movies and, there'd be like 1 or 2 movies about hot button political or environmental issues or whatever. Now, forget it. It's fucking 90% of that shit. And, you know, a couple of like movies that are just meant to like entertain you or have a good time. There's like 3 of those. The rest of it is all whatever the top. And I have all the catalogs. You can go back and you could literally see what the fuck has been going on in the world.
Times change for better or worse. No,
we can look
something. Being an 80s kid, do you hope, and he's nominated for Best Supporting Actor, do you hope Short Round wins?
Oh, yeah, that was cool, wasn't it? His speech at the Golden Globes was great.
Dude, that was so fucking like moving. Like, it's Steven Spielberg is here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like,
yeah.
I'm not trying to make fun of him. I mean, that was really
he was so fucking great in those couple roles as a kid too, wasn't he?
Dude, Short Round, are you kidding me? He crushed that. And that's his first role ever. Did you hear how he got that spot?
No.
He wasn't even an actor. They were looking for they knew they wanted to be an Asian kid, Short Round. And they couldn't find anybody. And then they did like a casting call near some Chinatown. I can't remember if it was in LA or San Francisco. And his mom took his brother, and his brother went in the room, or, you know, did okay or whatever. And then he was just sitting in the lobby, just along for the ride, you know, because they didn't have a babysitter or whatever. And they're like, hey, do you want to try? And he's like, and he went in. And 3 weeks later, he said he was on a plane to Sri Lanka to shoot.
And then he was in
Goonies. Come on. That might be the quintessential 80s movie if you really had to pick one.
Well, yeah, we said, what's the ultimate 80s album? It's Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet.
No.
Yes. I know, dude.
You said that. We didn't say that.
Okay. What are you going to say? Is Appetite?
I'd have to think about it off the top of my head, yes.
I mean, that's my favorite album of all time, and I still don't think it's the quintessential 80s album. It's got a lot of punk influence from the 70s. It's got some light progressionary grunge influence going into the 90s. That's a musical fucking masterpiece. But as far as a pure 80s album, because it touches on the music videos, it touches on the period of time, the hair, the style, everything, dude, that's it. And if you talk about what's the movie of 1985, right in the middle of the decade, dude, it's fucking Goonies. Period. It may not be the best movie of the fucking 80s, but the Goonies.
No, but that is the quintessential 80s movie. It's a group of kids against some kind of, I don't want to say evil, but the bad guys, a stronger force, right?
Mm-hmm.
Adventure, figuring it out. That's it. I mean, and that's we said this.
We talked about it last time.
Things.
That movie just got, or that house just got bought, you know.
I know, by a fan.
There. Dude, I cannot find the picture. I have a picture of me in front of that doing the truffle shuffle like 10 years ago, and I can't find it. I don't know where. I have pictures from all over Astoria, and we went to look at the fucking big rocks at the ocean that are in it, you know, but that's like 40 minutes away, an hour away. People don't realize it's not right there. Like, I have all that, but I can't find the picture I took in front of that. And at the time, it wasn't easy to take pictures there because the person that owned that was like kind of grumpy and didn't want people bothering them and whatever else. So
well, now the new dude who bought it, he put up a big banner that says Goonies Welcome.
Yeah.
And then one of the neighbors is still old and crotchety and has one that says Goonies Not Welcome. And then another neighbor who's a Goonies fan, literally there's a huge banner with an arrow to the dickhead's house, and it says "Ignore Karen" in Goonies font.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna play out well.
Oh yeah, and the dude's like, dude, if people want to come here, take a picture, do the truffle shuffle, I got no problem with that. Just be respectful of the property and the neighbors. That's all.
Right.
I got neighbors.
Good neighbors. Goonies neighbors.
Goonies. Anyway, you got anything else?
Oh yeah, dude. We got a whole nother segment deal. We got a little longer episode today because I got a couple things here. So on my trip to Sundance, I was finally finishing this book.
Remind everyone again how many years you've been going to Sundance.
This was my 21st year.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Right. Should I talk about Cleveland some more?
Oh my God.
No. Maybe. What else? What are my usual talking points? So back when I was collecting video games in 2003,
games, yeah. I was an early collector of video games. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
I sold my whole collection for like $2,000. Anyway.
Yeah. So this is Larry Bird, Irving Magic Johnson, When the Game Was Ours. It's a biography about Larry and Magic's connection going back even to high school. Okay. This is one of the best sports books now, of course, we grew up in this time. Yeah, I'm a little bit older than you. So while Michael Jordan is my favorite player and probably of any sport of all time in that time period and watching those games and whatever, there's a lot of memories in this book for me growing up watching the NBA in the 80s and Larry and Magic's. Dude, that you have to read that book. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that book. The differences of the two guys, their friendship, their competitiveness, their camaraderie, all the guys that are in it, all the 80s legends. I think the 80s time for the NBA was the golden age. There's no doubt. I mean, that was the best time for the NBA.
100%. 100%. By the way, this is the first issue of Street Smith's Pro Basketball before this baseball and ball. And it's interesting beautifully. This came 1988 and it poses the question.
Oh, yeah, the old Street and Smiths. You had to get the Street and Smiths.
This was 1988. Who did you pick of these three? On the cover are Larry Bird and Michael Jordan, 3 years into his career.
Who would I pick?
I'm sure. In 98.
You're breaking up pretty bad. I think we're losing your signal. I'm not able to hear you.
I don't fucking know.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm losing your signal on the StreamYard, unfortunately.
I'm losing your signal on the StreamYard. That's your pop on going black and coming back.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. We're going to save this one for the next episode this weekend. We're going to dive into some of this stuff because we had a lot of segments to hit anyway on this sports talk, and we're already at an hour. So if you want to join in with us next time, we'll get this Nardini's borrowed internet from his neighbor back online and go from there. We're definitely going to hit that stuff, the NBA stuff, and find some other goodies to talk to you about. Shoot us over some questions if you want us to cover anything. And yeah, thanks for joining today, guys. Talk to you soon. Later.